Good morning, everyone. There are all these people that are here this morning. I want to say good morning. This is our staff meeting of March the 24th, and we're going to get started. We have actually one thing on our agenda and then another that is hopefully as important. So the first item is Reconnecting Communities update. Chris Schneider of Hamilton County Planning and Development. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning. Chris Schneider. I work with the Community Planning Division, Planning and Development. I'm here today to give an update on the Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods project. If you recall, I was here maybe in the fall of 2025 as we kicked off this planning process. And now we're nearing the end of the process. So just wanted to provide you some updates on where we are, what we're doing, and some of the recommendations that have resulted from the plan. So just a reminder, this was a grant through that the First Suburbs Consortium of Southwest Ohio applied and received in conjunction with the community planning and the county that looks at connectivity in the north central pieces of Hamilton County. So where multiple railroads exist, I-75 runs north and south, and then you have the Mill Creek as well. So east-west connectivity is very challenging. The reason this is important and part of the impetus for working on this is there's a lot of momentum occurring right now in terms of economic development in our study area. Specifically, there's the Givaudan Corporation that's coming in. We have the Project Forge site. The Lincoln Heights School continues to progress. There's the Arrow Hub campus in Evendale, and then the Sharonville Loop has announced some changes. And then, of course, the former Stearns and Foster site, which I don't know if there are any plans necessarily for that yet, but a big opportunity there. So it's important to ensure that connectivity exists so these economic development projects can continue to move forward. Our study area for this site, as a reminder, is the villages of Arlington Heights, Evendale, Lincoln Heights, and Lockland, and then the two cities of Reading and Sharonville. As we began this process back in the fall, we kind of identified key east-west corridors, transportation corridors that were being impacted by I-75 and the multiple railroads that exist. And so those include Kemper Road, Sharon Road, Glendale Milford, Shepherd Avenue and Smalley Road, that connection there. Wyoming Avenue, Clark Street, Davis Street, and Galbraith. So multiple east-west connections through these 6 communities in the study area that we, with our consultant, drilled into. As a reminder, it was a $300,000 grant, and we have a consultant that we've been working with. So where are we today? We kicked off back in the fall, September, October of 2025. We've had multiple engagement sessions. We're working through the process and working on a final draft, which should be done in April or May of 2026 as this grant comes to an end. We have had multiple public engagement sessions. We have a steering committee, which includes a representative of each of the 6 communities, as well as local stakeholders and nonprofit organizations in the communities and study areas that are on that steering committee. And so back in the fall, we had 3 public engagement sessions and 3 different locations in the study area that we basically asked the community what kind of improvements do they want to see here? What could help you as people who live there get to the places you want to be, and how do you get around? And then we took that information and we gave it back to the steering committee and used that information to help craft our recommendations. The recommendations were created, and then just a few weeks ago, we had a second round of public engagement sessions where we presented a lot of those recommendations to get feedback from the communities. And thankfully, there was generally everyone was on board with the recommendations from the plan. So what were the goals of this project moving forward? The first one is mobility and connectivity. How do you enhance the connectivity in terms of vehicle traffic, but also biking and walking in the study area? Health and safety. Most importantly, those railroad crossings. We have evidence of children and people climbing through stopped trains, which is very dangerous. So how do we improve the health and safety for the people who live in those 6 communities? And then third, the economic vitality. So as I said earlier, improving that connectivity in the area to help improve the economic access to sites in the area. So the preliminary ideas from this engagement sessions, there were numerous, around 15 or 20. These are just a highlight of the few, which include streetscape improvements, of course, improved railroad crossings, make them more safe, improvements around the Arrow Hub area, Reading Road improvements, and then additional street or bridge type connections through the area. And so based on all of the recommendations that we had in the first round of public engagement, the steering committee decided on 3 that were maybe the highest priorities. The consultant's time was limited in that aspect, and so they were able to really drill into the 3 highest priorities. And so the 3 priorities beginning, the first would be the I-75 northbound lane of the Laughlin split. I'm sure you're aware is to be vacated, 5 or 10 years probably. But what could be done once that viaduct is removed and not there anymore? What are the options for that area? Our analysis determined that given its use as a interstate, that it's probably not appropriate for residential in the future or anything like that, but turning it into some sort of linear park system. So a trail, a biking and walking trail that would connect from the north through the south and into the other communities. So this is what it looks like today, standing on Wyoming Avenue. You have the Rainbow Bridge to the left, and that's the I-75 on the Laughlin split, the northbound side, with the viaduct above. We worked through with a consultant some renderings of what it could look like if that viaduct bridge is removed and potentially a trail, a shared use path, biking and walking along the Mill Creek with access, were to be located there. So the second big recommendation that we were able to drill into is located in Laughlin and Reading. I'm sure you're familiar with the Shepherd Road interchange off of I-75. Currently, when you go east onto Shepherd, you have to turn and turn left onto Smalley. There's a railroad crossing there, and the train will sit sometimes for hours. And it's a high traffic east-west connection area for the valley area. And so when analyzing with our engineering staff, they're proposing a bridge that would connect over, which would connect the Shepherd to Columbia Avenue into Reading over the railroad. So the stoppages that are currently occurring in that corridor would not be an impact to the vehicle traffic. Of course, there would be sidewalks or a biking path of some sort on that bridge. But this was the second recommendation that we've spent more time looking into. And then finally, the third big recommendation that we drilled into a little more is the Arrow Hub and Glendale-Milford area, and how can we improve connectivity through Lincoln Heights into the communities to the south. And so currently there's the firing range, which is moving locations, and so the city hasn't indicated any indication on what will become of that land, but there is an opportunity to connect to the south. As you can get as close as you can to I-75 to Magnolia Avenue into the south, which would then connect into Laughlin on Shepherd Lane down below as you move toward the south. And then an additional connection in Laughlin. I think there used to be a connection here, but there were some roads that ODOT redid, so there's an opportunity for future connections down into Laughlin, which would be the right image there. So the next steps are we're working through, we have a state of the study report, which is kind of our existing conditions report for the first half of our study, working through some conceptual and cost estimate designs for those 3 bigger projects. We've already begun community planning staff has already begun meeting with the 6 communities and their elected officials to similar as today. I met with Arlington Heights last night to give them an update on where we were, and ideally those 6 communities will work through some sort of adoption, acceptance, approval process, whatever's right for them of this plan. And then ultimately what the big goal is to take this plan back to funding sources for future funding opportunities. So it was originally part of a large transportation bill with the USDOT, and once the plan was created, you can take it back to them, local funding, state funding, OKI, whatever that looks like. But there's now a plan in place, which a lot of times you can get extra scoring on those applications if there's a plan in place for those. And that's the end of my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Driehaus, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Reconnecting communities, not to be confused with connecting communities.
Correct.
So I was like, okay, wait a minute. So reconnecting communities, and thank you for bringing to us the priorities of the community, because I think it's, and you highlighted it, this public input piece
Absolutely.
is critical to the decision-making process here. So I'm glad that you did all of that work. I know it takes a lot of time and effort, but it's in the end the right thing to do in order to get the community buy-in for what you've presented to us today. I want to ask a question about one of your options or one of your priorities. So the first one is very obvious. That one is about reclaiming property for a pathway, whether it's biking or pedestrian usage along the Mill Creek. And, you know, there's a movement, I'm sure you know this, all the way down the Mill Creek.
Correct.
To do this connection.
It would
So,
tie into some of the Tri-State Trails plans.
yeah, this would be a critical piece of that. So I think that's a great idea. And then the number 2 was also obvious, right? Trying to mitigate the impact of trains stopping in the
Yes.
middle of these communities, which we hear about all the time, and it's a huge issue. And so I appreciate that one. Number 3 is less obvious to me.
Okay.
So this idea that there's some connection to the south of some of the communities that were impacted by the study. Help me better understand kind of the reason for that and what you're trying to achieve through these connections.
Yeah, I think so. There's an economic component of that area where Magnolia and Glendale Milford, the one you're talking about, there's the Arrow Hub, so an improved connection to the south from the Arrow Hub into the Shepherd Lane interchange there. And I know there's also the Glendale Milford interchange right there next to it. So with working through that, in addition to that, our comments during the public engagement sessions, specifically from people who were living in Lincoln Heights, there were some concerns about improving their connectivity to the places they want to be and the places they want to go. And so as we work through that process of kind of analyzing where potential connections could occur, that north-south connection from Magnolia to Glendale Milford made sense. Now, these aren't all the recommendations. There are 15 others, but those are the 3 big ones that we drilled into.
So yes, and I've heard folks in Lincoln Heights talk about feeling cut off.
Yes.
Right, from other things. I was just wondering more specifically related to what the connection is to, right? Or is it not only connecting to what already exists, but hoping that economic development, like that aerospace property, will become a great economic driver in those communities, the Woodlawn, Lincoln Heights, Evendale communities that are right there.
Correct.
But also any other ideas about what might pop up if a connection were to be built from Lincoln Heights moving to the south, and was there any conversation about that, or was it more of a we feel cut off, we would like to have a more connected system to get us, as you say, to where they want to go?
Yeah, I think the second one was the key, but there's also the reuse of the firing range site, which once they move up to the new site in Colerain Township, what could happen there? I don't know if there are any plans or thoughts necessarily for that, but improved access to future development on that site as well.
Yeah, looking forward to all of that, by the
Yeah.
way. Thank you for answering that question. Just wanted to put a finer point on it. And then lastly, so these look like great projects. They also look like very expensive projects.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if there was a cost estimate done for any of them, and if so, what are those cost estimates? And then secondarily, you talked about some of the potential funding sources. What does that process look like?
Yeah. Don't have cost estimates yet. The consultant team is working on those right now to be part of the final draft of the plan. Be happy to share those with the commissioners once those numbers are finalized. But the answer is yes, there will be. They are going to be very expensive, especially the bridge piece of that. I think we've got some local advocates who are ready to push this plan forward after it's completed and look for future funding opportunities. And our staff can help with that as well. Does that answer your question? The second part of your question?
Yeah. OKI.
Correct.
Yeah.
Potential USDOT funding sources where the funds for this grant came from. I know administrations change, and that funding, this funding for this project, what came under the Biden administration, and it's no longer part of that. But funding sources like that come out all the time, and it's just making sure we're prepared for those, to apply for those, whoever that is, whether it's us, we can help, assist, or maybe it's a local jurisdiction in the study area that wants to try to push forward with something like that.
Okay. And I'm sure Anson Turley is in the loop on these things too, because he has a lot of communication with our federal lobbyists to make sure that we're aware of these funding opportunities when they present themselves. So, okay. Well, thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you for your report, and it was very detailed. And of course, I love the inclusiveness of the residents. That's certainly important. And you're moving forward. That's great. You're not standing still. I had a question about the $300,000 grant. What was that actually? You talked about a consultant.
Yeah.
And what else are you using that $300,000 for?
Yeah, so the consultant work is the biggest piece of the grant. So we've had the multiple engagement sessions. We're working through the final draft, and they're creating cost estimates, preliminary engineering, which can get kind of expensive, of those three big plans. So there's an engineer on the consulting team who is looking at all three of those. The bridge is the big one, and making sure that preliminarily the engineering for that could work. We don't want to propose something that then gets to a second phase and they're like, well, we can't actually do this. So we're using a lot of the funds to work through a lot of this preliminary work. So when it gets to phase two and there's funding available, that's less work that has to be done on that end.
Very good.
And the Regional Planning Commission as well has matched $75,000 towards this project, which has added to the deliverables.
Well, that's great. I was looking at number one, and you were saying possibly a park. I'd like to address item 3. And who actually owns the property? So would it be Lincoln Heights and Laughlin actually own? I mean, that's ODOT right there.
There's a lot of ODOT land.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ODOT right-of-way in that area.
But in order to go through, I know Air Hub, I've seen their plans back in 2015. There's an area right there, and I had encouraged, let me let you answer the question first. So Lincoln Heights has some of the land that they would have to go through, or just ODOT?
I think it would tie into the Magnolia Avenue, which is a right-of-way in Lincoln Heights, and it would tie into Arrow Hub Boulevard, maybe, whatever the name of that street is to the north. Yes.
Okay. And the reason why I asked that is because I was wondering, the people who actually own the property that intersects, do they have priority decision-making power on what they want there? Because I know we were discussing this way back, and they talked about a park then, right in that number 3 area. And I had suggested do something that can make some money, like there's no, I hate to say, gas station anywhere for maybe 3, 4, 5 miles until you get up towards Sharonville.
Okay.
And so did they maybe want people that are going down the interstate to have to pull in, go around, they can get some gas and some crackers or whatever and then go on. It's very convenient. So I was just suggesting, I don't know if they thought of something more than a park. I mean, a park is nice, you can do both, but do something that generates income for that area. I think it would be a great idea. And also, I don't know, have you seen the Aero Hub designs and what areas they're trying to go into? And
I've seen them preliminarily.
it might be good to look at it because
Okay.
part of their plans already has them going into that area.
Correct.
As long as those residents own that property, they can make the decision on what they want there.
Absolutely. If it's private land and whoever owns that, it's their
Exactly.
it's their prerogative to do what they
So
do
I
with
would
it.
suggest something economically
Okay.
impactful for that village.
I think our final report would encourage that
Okay.
as well.
Very good.
Given its proximity to the Aero Hub and the interstate both, there's an opportunity there that could be tapped into.
Because they are waiting for the gun range to close, and then they're gonna move in. I already know that, so.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
all of these projects are complicated and
Oh, yeah.
numerous property owners, et cetera, et cetera.
yeah.
So,
But thank you so much for all your hard work.
yeah, thank you.
Okay, that's all I have. All righty. Thank you, sir. Now, we have an executive session. It's an executive session pursuant to RC Section 121.22G3 to conduct a conference with an attorney for the public body concerning the subject of pending litigation. I make a motion.
Second?
Commissioner Summer Adumas.
Yes,
Commissioner Dreehouse.
Yes?
thank you.